Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to NRW. I'm your host today, Rob Medina, and I thank you very much for joining me here today because today I'm reviewing a film that's celebrating its 5-year anniversary this week on August 26th for the film Daylight's End. And I'm going to give you a bit of a backstory on how I got to watch this movie because it's a rather interesting journey on what led up to watching this film. So this all started with Scott Adkins. For anyone who's ever watched this channel and seen my reviews, you'll all know that I'm a huge Scott Adkins fan. I've been a fan of Scott Adkins since 2006. So at any rate, of course, it led me to check out some of his other works, which then led me to check out other people he's worked with. Jesse V. Johnson, who's been one of my favorite new directors in the last couple of years. And a lot of the movies he's done with Scott Adkins have been nothing short of amazing, in my opinion. And myself and David Nesicato have gotten an opportunity to interview Jesse last year on this channel, and I'll have the iCard for you to click on. If you've never checked out the interview, I recommend you check it out because he really goes in depth about a lot of things he's been through in making movies, his experiences, and so on. It's really fascinating stuff. But as a result of me watching Jesse's films with Scott Adkins, it also led me to become a huge fan of Louis Mandylor, who I've had a great opportunity to speak with him on my show, You're So Cool with Rob Medina, and I also have that card I meant to say for you to click on so that way you guys can check out that episode because it is a really fascinating story of this man's journey that he's sharing with his experience of what he has gone through to get to where he's at now. Really fascinating stuff, and in my opinion, one of the most underrated actors in the industry. And then, so becoming a fan of Scott Adkins led me to become a fan of Jesse V. Johnson, and then, of course, to Louis Mandylor. And then, as a result of becoming a fan of Louis Mandylor, I decided to check out some of his other movies, too. And one of the films that I came across that I absolutely love is a film that he had done called The Brave, which is directed by William Kaufman. When I saw The Brave, I was blown away at how amazing that movie was, considering it's a very low-budget film, but it never felt that way by any means. It felt like a really epic movie from start to finish. And I had become a fan of William Kaufman from that point on. So I decided to check out some of his other work, and it turns out I have seen some of his other movies, well, at least one other movie, I should say, that he had done with Scott Adkins, which I also do own, Jarhead 3, The Siege, which is a movie that I love. I love that movie. I would recommend you guys check it out. I think it's really worth your time. And then from there, I started to look at some of his other work as well, too. And then I ended up watching a movie called Sinners and Saints, which is a fucking great movie. I love that movie, Sinners and Saints, with Johnny Strong, and also Louis Mandylor was in the movie, too. And then he had done a movie that I was blown away with called Daylight's End. I saw that movie, and honestly, I didn't really know what to expect because the market has been oversaturated with zombie movies. And although this is considered to be a zombie film to an extent, I would say, it's kind of like just left ambiguous for you to figure out what these creatures are, if you will. And when I saw the movie, I was just astonished, like how good this movie really is. Like, it's from start to finish, I was blown away. So I decided that now, this marking the 5-year anniversary of this film's release, this would be a good opportunity for me to start this review. I had made mention earlier that Will Kaufman had directed this film, but the film was written by Chad Law, and if I remember hearing correctly, Chad Law had wrote this movie a number of years ago, and he had initially submitted the script over to a docuseries that was started up by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon and a few other people in the industry called Project Greenlight, which is a TV show that was meant to help up-and-coming screenwriters and filmmakers to get their project off the ground and hopefully turn into a full feature-length film. And the only two films that I remember that came out of that particular docuseries, one of which I don't remember the title off the top of my head, but I do know that it starred Shia LaBeouf and Amy Smart, and I'm sure I'll have the poster for you guys to see for the name of that movie. And the other movie is called Feast, which is a film that I actually rented when it had come out on DVD, and I remember enjoying a great deal. I loved that movie, at least at the time when I saw it. And I actually owned the movie as well, too, and I saw it, I think, maybe like 3-4 years ago, and I remember still liking it, but honestly, I don't really remember too many details about that, oddly enough. But I do know that there were some projects that did eventually come to fruition through that docuseries. And of course, we all know now that Chad Law's script never got off the ground through that docuseries. So years later, he started working with Will Kaufman on numerous projects, and then eventually this script came about. And long story short, I do know that the original setting was supposed to be in the Midwest, somewhere in Indiana, if I'm not mistaken, which is where Chad Law is from. But then they changed it from being in Indiana to now into Texas, and then some other changes along the way to kind of make the story more fitting to its Texas setting now. Well, with what we got in this movie now, I will say right off the bat, I'm pretty sure you picked up on it when you first saw the introduction of this review, that I love this movie, and a number of reasons why. Will Kaufman, the writing by Chad Law, and then the actors in this movie, which I'm going to read off the list here because there's quite a few solid, and I mean solid actors. We got the lead in Johnny Strong, who plays Thomas Rourke in the movie. And when I've talked to Louis Mandylor, he briefly shared a story that Johnny Strong is one of those actors that apparently gets a lot of offers and he always turns them down because he'd rather work on projects that really are meaningful to him. And when you watch movies like Sinners and Saints, Daylight Sand, and there's a new movie that's coming out next year that him and Will Kaufman have been working on called War Horse 1, honestly, they are like his movies that he's done with Will Kaufman have been nothing short of amazing, in my opinion. I think they're really solid films, and anytime I see Johnny's name on the marquee, I'm all for it because I trust this man's choices, his sensibilities, his acting, and many other things. This guy's solid from top to bottom. And of course, we also have the legendary Lance Henriksen, who has been in the industry for decades and has been some of the most iconic movies of all time. So no doubt in my mind, I knew when I saw his name that he was going to deliver a strong performance, and my God, does he do so. This guy's fucking awesome in this movie. And then we also have Louis Mandylor, who plays his son in the movie, and son of Lance Henriksen's character. Louis, you already know how I feel about him. If you haven't heard already, I love this guy. I think he's one of the greatest actors of all time. He's one of the hardest working actors in the industry, and this guy always puts his A game. And he also happened to share a little story of experience in work in the film, which I'll delve into a little bit later on in this review. But we also have another actors in the movie. We have Hakeem K. Kazim. If I mispronounce the name, sir, I apologize. But he is fucking awesome in that movie. We also have Krzysztof Szynski, who is a former UFC fighter who plays more or less the main villain in this movie. And I'll be definitely getting into his character in the film. And then we also have the actress Chelsea Edmondson and Gary Kearns. All great actors. Everybody in this movie does a really good job. And when you watch the movie, there's definitely a major influence from other films such as The Road Warrior. I remember Chad Law has said Assault on Precinct 13 had a bit of influence on this particular movie, 28 Days Later, and the novel I Am Legend. And when you watch this film, you can certainly see those influences, but it's still its own thing. It still has its own identity, and it's hard to really discuss whether or not if these particular creatures are even vampires or let alone even zombies. But I don't think it's ever really mentioned at all. And truthfully, I don't really care that it was or that it wasn't, because that really wasn't the point. And the movie is really it's a really strong character-driven story. Like, it really is from start to finish. Like, I love this movie, if you can't tell already. So I'll definitely be getting into a little bit of the plot, not too much, because there's some things that I think when you watch it, it's best for you to discover as you watch it along the way, even though the film has been out for a number of years. But I think it's one of those movies you should just watch, and hopefully you guys will enjoy from start to finish like I did. And then, of course, I'll get into my positives, and then I'll be getting into my negatives. And for the sake of argument, since I don't really know what these creatures are, whether they're vampires or zombies, because they burn in the light, and then they don't have any fangs, but they can turn other people into them. So just again, for the sake of argument, I'm just going to call these guys creatures. So that way you know who I'm talking about when I refer to them as that. But the film starts off with Rourke, played by Johnny Strong, who is out hunting these creatures. And along the way, he makes a stop in this one little town in Texas. And there happens to be a group of survivors who are passing through this town, because we come to find out later on that they were looking for an airplane where they can take all the other remaining survivors in this little building that they are all stationed at in Dallas, so they can bring them all to that airplane and then make way out to this one particular base that is still thriving with survivors, as far as supplies and everything that they need to keep themselves alive at this base, which is being protected off, and apparently there are no creatures around in that facility. So anyways, so they were there passing through to get back over to Dallas, but along the way they were ambushed when they come across this young lady who is out in the middle of the road talking to her baby doll, and then they are checking up on her, and then they're all killed off with the exception of one survivor named Sam, played by the actress Chelsea Edmondson. And she end up getting saved by Rourke, who kills off all these marauders, I think is how you pronounce them. And she convinces him, please take me back to Dallas, and please take both of us here. We can give you whatever you need. We have gas, we have food, we have supplies, ammunition, whatever you need, we can give that to you, but please get us back over to Dallas before it gets dark. And then he's like, all right, we'll do so. So they make it back in Dallas in the nick of time, and then all hell breaks loose after that. Because what ends up happening is that they when everyone in that facility, in that particular building in Dallas, are learning that there is a plane out there that they could actually fly out to this base to basically live out the rest of their lives at that base. They realize that they're running low on time, because every single night these creatures are making it very difficult for them to survive, because they're finding new and more creative ways to break in. And in this particular night, the night that Rourke shows up, they're all breaking in. So long story short, a lot of people die, some people survive, a lot of creatures die along the way too, and everyone goes home to this new base, and Rourke goes on, lives another day, and goes out for a hunt for the remaining days of his life, if you will. So that is the film in a nutshell. But there are other things about this movie that I decided not to get into in terms of like certain character arcs that happen in this movie, which I think is very interesting for a film like this, because like I said before, this is a very character-driven movie. So I'm going to get into my positives, and then of course, believe it or not, there are some negatives, which I'll be getting into, but let's first start with the positives. The first positive for me has to do with all the actors in this movie. Everybody, and I mean literally everyone from top to bottom, does a great job with their performance. Not a single actor in this movie puts in a phoned-in performance. Everyone does a really good job with conveying these emotional beats that's required in this film, because there's a lot of horrific moments that occur that these characters have to go through, and the actors that are delivering these performances do a really good job in conveying those emotional beats that's required. And I mentioned earlier that Johnny Strong, who's the lead in this movie, this guy, I'm going to say this right off the bat. As a straight man, I can look at that guy and say, that is a beautiful man right there, because there's a certain charisma this guy has, and it reminds me a lot of guys from the 70s, like Clint Eastwood, Steve McQueen, Charles Bronson. Like, he has that it factor where he doesn't say a lot. And quite frankly, even though he does a lot in the movie, but there's a certain, what's the best way to describe it? This guy has a certain essence about him where he doesn't call for attention, but you can't keep your eyes off of him. I mean, he really has that it factor. And when Lewis had shared with me that Johnny gets offered a shit ton of projects, he's turning them all down because he'd rather work on a project that he really is very interested in working on. And lately, the projects he's been working on are with Will Kaufman, and the movies that he's been working on with Will have been nothing short of amazing. Sinners and Saints is a great example of that, which I believe is their first project working together. And then, of course, Daylight's End. And there's another movie that's coming out next year called Warhorse 1, which I'm excited beyond believable. I have the utmost confidence it's going to be a solid movie, because after watching Sinners and Saints, Daylight's End, and of course a movie I mentioned previously called The Brave, Will Kaufman's movies are nothing short of amazing. I love his movies. He's one of my new favorite directors in the last couple of years, alongside with Jesse V. Johnson. But I'll definitely delve into Will's direction of the movie. But all the other actors in this movie, Chelsea Edmondson, this is not a character, a female character that's a damsel in distress. I mean, yes, there is a moment where she is in need of help, but I never felt that this was someone that was a character that was meant to be there to make the heroes look good. I never felt that at all. This is a character who is certainly having her own struggles and has her say in the matter, and not once did I ever feel like this is just a female character for sake of being a female character. It's a character, a really good one at that, and she does a great job with the performance, and I give her props for her performance in this movie, and everyone else in the movie too. I mentioned the name of Hakeem Kai Kazim. If I mispronounce the name again, I apologize, but this guy, I mean, I've seen him before in other movies, but his performance in this film, I fucking adore. Like, I love everybody's performance, but his performance really stuck out for me as well, because he's not in the movie that much, but the times he's in the film, you really feel his pain. You really do feel for his, for the journey that everyone is going through. But there's a moment in time where you get to spend time with the character, not a whole lot, but you still feel that impact with those facial expressions that he has, and it's just amazing how him and everyone else are able to convey those emotional beats to really help you understand what they're going through, and that what they're going through now is a very dire situation, and it's do or die at this point. And you certainly do feel that anticipation of this journey that they have to go through in order for them to arrive at this base safely. So it's nothing here has been taken for granted, as far as I can tell, with everyone's performance. It's nothing short of amazing. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. My next positive has to do with the director and William Kaufman. I mentioned earlier that William Kaufman is one of my new favorite directors in the last couple of years. I believe, alongside with Jesse V. Johnson, these guys have made some of the best movies that I've come across that most people probably never heard of. But I hope that in time they will get the opportunity to really take on some major tentpole projects, whether it be original projects or some sort of IP that's very popular with the audience, with the general public, I should say. That if you give them the opportunity, especially Will, the opportunity to take control of the project and let them just do their thing, let them bring in people that can really make the story epic, make the story unique, make it very personal, you'll probably get some of the best action films you'll ever see. I really truly do believe that, and what I've been able to see with what he's done with these movies he's been doing as of late, it's nothing short of amazing. And you can also tell too that Will has a really good relationship with a lot of the people he's worked with on his movies, and when you see what they've been able to put together, given the budget and the time and the conditions that they are in, they've made some incredible projects. And I mean, this movie's no different here. And from what I understand, they had shot this movie in Texas, and Dallas, Texas to be specific, in August, which is incredibly high. It was like over 100 degrees. And I mentioned earlier that Louis Mandylor had shared a story with me, which is on my episode of You're So Cool with Rob Medina. And in that story, he had shared that it was that he had almost died making this movie, where he had passed out and his kidneys had failed considerably, and he was in the hospital for like 2 weeks, was able to recover, and then they had to stop production for that amount of time for him to be able to come back and then continue on from there. And when you learn what it took to make this movie and how incredibly hot it is, and when you watch the movie, you can see that everyone's pretty much melting away because everyone's just drenched in sweat from top to bottom. And under those conditions where they're in a building that has no AC, and then you have all these lights to illuminate the specific spots that they need to shoot, and having everyone in one room breathing heavy, and I can't imagine how uncomfortable that was. So considering the conditions that they were working under here, and not knowing that, when you look at it, you would never tell. And it's just amazing how these filmmakers and actors and everybody else involved making these projects do an incredible job to tell the story. And I mean, I'm just blown away. Like, I'm amazed when I hear about these stories. And Will Kaufman has always been one of those directors now that I've come across that have really showcased of what you can do under the worst conditions and still come up with an outstanding and amazing project. So I give a lot of props to you, Will, because this movie is fucking amazing. The next positive for me has to do with the music in this film, the score to this movie. It's amazing. The score is done by the actor Johnny Strong, and for many of you guys may not know this, but Johnny Strong is actually a really wonderful musician in his own right. He was in a group called Operator, and I'm not sure if there's still a group now. I haven't been keeping up with their music like that, but the music that I have heard in the past, I do genuinely enjoy. And there's one song that I'm just going to mention right now called Let You Go, that was featured in the movie Sinners and Saints. If you've never heard that song, I highly recommend you go out of your way to check that song out, because that song is amazing. I love, and I mean love, that song. But the point I'm getting at is this. Johnny Strong's composition with the score in this movie is amazing, in my opinion, because he definitely does add his rock background into the music, into the score in this film, but it's never a distracting one. It's never like dun 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 dun. It's none of that sort. It's really much more subtle, and it does complement the scenes. When you hear what he's been able to put together with the score in this film, I'm just blown away that, quite frankly, that he hasn't been offered, at least if he has, or maybe he's turned it down, I don't know, but that we haven't seen more of his score in other movies. Because I think with what he's been able to do with this film, and even with Sinners and Saints, which was really good too, I'm amazed that there has been more opportunities for us to be able to see more of his scoring in other films. And I have no doubt in my mind that he's definitely going to be scoring the movie War Horse 1 that Will Kaufman had directed. And I'm really excited to see what he's going to be doing with that film as well. But that's really kind of where the end of my positives here are, because I think I pretty much covered everything that I wanted to cover about what it is about the movie that I love. And I've already said it before, the story is fantastic, the script is amazing, the actors are phenomenal, the scoring is phenomenal, the directing under Will Kaufman is fantastic, the set designs, just the cinematography, the overall aesthetics of the film is beautiful. I think it's a well done film. But there are some negatives, so now this will be a perfect segue for me to get into my negatives. As far as the negatives are concerned, I want to point this out. the negatives that I'm pointing out here aren't necessarily a flaw on the movie itself. It's not that, because I understand that a lot of the things that probably didn't work out as well has to do with the fact that there was not enough money, not enough time, resources, availability to really bring the film up to par as far as the visual effects are concerned, because that was one of the sticking points for me in this movie. Is that it's quite obvious that when these creatures are being burned up alive from the sun, you could tell that the smoke was very fake. It's very obvious, and it was a little distracting at times, but it wasn't enough for me to it wasn't enough to take me away from my enjoyment of the movie or with my investment with the story or the characters. It wasn't as bad, but it was very obvious that, okay, you could tell that this was fake. One thing I also want to point out with regards to the villain, I mentioned before that Krzysztof Kaczynski is more or less the main villain in this movie. You definitely do feel his presence, but the way that the character was set up as more or less the alpha of this group of creatures, I feel like it wasn't done effectively for my taste. Now, again, I'm sure a lot of it has to do with a number of different factors, but everything else worked in terms of like how the creatures are coming out. You definitely feel their presence. You felt the danger. But as far as the main alpha, the leader, if you will, of this group of creatures, I didn't really feel that from him. But regardless of that, there were moments where his presence is very effective. But there were other moments where I felt like it could have been handled a little bit better, in my opinion. But again, this is not a slight on anyone else working on the project and the use of the character. I'm sure there's reasons for that, because it was effective at times, but most of the time for me, I didn't feel that impact that I would have liked from that particular villain, to really feel his power, if you will. So that's really my major complaint with the movie. And as far as everything else is concerned, I mean, really, you could tell that everyone put in their best efforts, and there's nothing here that I can take away that was a problem for me, other than the special effects and the use of the villain. That's really my only problem with the movie. Outside of that, that's pretty much it. So now this will be a perfect segue for me to get into my rating. And if you can't tell by now, you should already know, I love this movie. I love the movie from the first time I saw it, and I've seen this movie, and this is no joke, probably over 15 times. Especially in preparation for this review, I watched this movie, I think, maybe like 3 times, so I can really like point out, looking for some of the finer details that I can point out about what it is about the movie that I thought worked very well. Some things I didn't like about it, which was very few. But there was a lot that I truly had taken away from this movie that I really, really connected with. So for me, I give this movie a solid cheers. And those are my thoughts on the film. If you've never heard of this movie and it's going to be the first time you're going to watch this movie, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. It's available on Amazon free with ads. You can also watch it on Tubi free with ads. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it is also available free with ads on YouTube. So please check out the film. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Also, if you have not done so already, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Also, make sure you share and like our videos and hit that notification bell down there. Follow us on our social media accounts. We have a Facebook and Instagram page at New Release Wednesdays and on Twitter at the NRW. And follow me on my social media accounts on Instagram, Rob_Medina0585, on Twitter, RobMedina0585, and on Facebook, simply just Rob Medina. And if you haven't heard already, I have a show on the channel, You're So Cool with Rob Medina, and I also have social media accounts you can follow me on there as well. On Instagram, You're So Cool with Rob Medina, and on Twitter, You're So Cool WRM. And I want to thank you all very much for joining me here today, but I want to close out with one thing before I sign off, which is that I mentioned before that this is a low-budget independent movie, and I've been fortunate enough to come across a lot of independent movies that don't have a lot of money, don't have a lot of resources, don't have a lot of time, but yet they've been able to tell a very impactful and wonderful character stories that I think in a lot of ways are far superior than most mainstream films that we've come across as of late. Not to say they don't exist in mainstream movies, they definitely do. So I hope that this will encourage you to go out of your way to check out these independent movies, especially movies like this, like Will Kaufman's films, which are virtually all independent movies, but my God, are they fucking amazing. And I hope you guys will spend your money on that, because that's really where your support really counts. When I watch movies like this, I'm blown away that we're not getting more of these films out there, because there are incredible filmmakers out there that have a great vision, a great story to tell. Let's give them the opportunity by spending money on their projects. So I hope you guys will be willing to do that. But until next time, everybody, you guys stay safe out there, and remember, cheers.